Hey, welcome to episode 7 of the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Tirapelli. I am so excited today to talk all about strength training and how to gain muscle mass after bariatric surgery with certified personal trainer and fitness consultant, Nick Bates. Nick was a two-sport athlete at Fresno State University. Once he left athletics, he found a passion in the health and fitness industry where he has worked for over 10 years. Over 7 years ago, Nick began his own business, Balance Fitness, where he has worked with a wide range of people, including professional and collegiate athletes, high school teams, pre- and post-op bariatric patients, and anyone looking to improve their overall health through private training. Nick also has digital clients that he trains via Zoom, as well as accountability clientele and bariatric consulting for multiple hospitals in the Central Valley. Thank you so much for being here, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I am so happy to have you just because I literally, obviously being a dietitian, I get a lot of nutrition questions about muscle building after bariatric surgery. But the number one issue that I don't have expertise in is how to gain the muscle through the different types of workouts. And I'm just so glad you're here because I think that'll help kind of shed some light on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like we kind of talked about, there's not a lot of information out there. So having done it for 10 plus years and worked with people, starting a year pre-op, and I have people that still worked with that had surgery 8 to 9 years ago. So, it's definitely a different type of clientele, and there's just different things that we do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey as a personal trainer and your business as a business owner, and kind of what brought you to where you are today and your experience working with bariatric clients?
Yeah. So I started working in training about 11 years ago, started a company called Terrio Therapy and Fitness. And I worked there for about 2 years. And we worked with a very wide clientele. And I predominantly wanted to work with athletes. I thought that's what I wanted to do. That was like my niche. And I slowly started working more and more with weight loss patients, just because that was kind of the demand at the time. And right around that time, I was asked by a local hospital to come and work with their bariatric department. And it started very small, very slow. And right around that time, I separated from Terrio and started my own business. And when I started my own business, it was like being thrown out into the world. And now what do? And I took a few clientele with me, but right around that time, everything at the hospital kind of started developing, and they started doing a lot of things that kind of aligned me with working with them a little more exclusively. And I was able to draw a lot of clientele from there and really work with a wide variety of that. So on doing that, I did that for a couple of years out of a local studio, and then I just kept growing. And this building here, which I used to work in and run, sat empty. So I subleased the building here at Terrio, and I brought some trainers with me. And within that time, I went from seeing anywhere from 500 to 600 to about 1,500 patients a year. We went from 2 trainers. We've had as many as 6. Each of us carrying a full week's workload. I see about 80 patients a week. And that keeps me very busy. So, it's been quite a journey. And then COVID kind of hit, and that kind of, threw a monkey wrench and everything, but I went really digital, which was very fortunate for me with the hospital. A lot of their stuff went all digital. And that's when I was introduced into this world, which worked out really well. It kept me working, kept me busy. But it also opened up a new avenue where I can work with people all over the Central Valley and all over the state now. So I will get people that, they can't travel all the way to Fresno for a workout, but I can check with them, weekly, monthly, and help them out. So that's pretty cool.
I love that. That's awesome. And I was, obviously you and I met back when you worked there, and I was working with helping you, and we were together in terms of helping clients with their goals in terms of athletes and things like that. And that's where we met. And I've always I was so pumped when I, obviously moved over to the hospital setting that I was in, and saw that you were working at another hospital in town with clients, and helping them with their fitness goals, because it's such an important piece. And I think that, one of the things I just want to start off today with is just talking about the benefits of lifting weights for bariatric, clients after their surgery. I think it's so important. It helps with, their transformation process that they're, in, getting strong is so helpful. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. And I kind of look at this in 2 ways. I always say, we talk about bariatric patients, because it's a very specific group. I try to look at it as a whole as well. Like, what are the actual benefits of just exercise in general for everybody? Because there are so many big benefits that we can all and take advantage of first of all, I say it's a good mood enhancer. When you have surgery, when you undergo surgery, you're going to, have a healing process, a recovery process. Exercise, walking, releases good endorphins. You release serotonin. That makes you feel good. It helps regulate sleep cycles. It helps control hunger cravings. That's a good thing, right? When we go into the weightlifting part of it, I always say that weightlifting is a very unique thing because when you have metabolic surgery, you're going to, change your metabolism. Weightlifting also changes your metabolism. So that's very empowering to know, like, you can control certain things there. So that's a very good tool to use. And I always encourage strength training because I think it's very important, not just from building a metabolic phase, but building a strong body. I always say, like, as we go through this journey, as you go through a weight loss journey, the thought and the encouragement and the hope is that we're all going to be more active, right? Like, we're going to start doing things we used to do, maybe pick up some new habits, start exploring new things. Having a strong body will just help with all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to kind of throw this into the benefits for women as well. I oftentimes do get that question. And as a woman myself, I have always, found lifting to be so helpful for all the reasons that you mentioned, but mainly for the strength and the higher metabolism. But for women specifically with, we don't have the high levels of testosterone as compared to men. So I often get that question of like, oh, I don't want to get bulky. I'm having bariatric surgery to lose weight and I'm afraid to start lifting because I don't want to like be putting on all kinds of mass. And normally my response is you're, most likely you're not. I mean, it would take a lot of training to do that. But oftentimes I just want to dispel that myth out there for women that, you're not going to overly get too bulky. Lifting is so great for you in changing your body composition.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, having started working with athletes, we understand that, like, as women go through life, we change, our bodies change. There's a statistic out there. It's like 1 in every 3 female athletes will have a major knee injury. Okay. Your hips widen. You have a different pelvic structure that puts pressure on our knees. So at bare minimum, like, I'd say if you're going to start a walking routine, maybe you're going to start walking, maybe you want to walk some, 3Ks, 5Ks, maybe you want to start hiking, strengthening our hips, strengthening our glutes. That's going to help protect your knees. So just from a structural standpoint, as far as like getting big and bulky, I always joke around and say, like, I wish we had that problem. Yeah. But, just to not even go down the rabbit hole of hormones, but like testosterone, like, having testosterone is like a major advantage to building muscle. It helps protein synthesis. It slows down the breakdown of muscle, helps recovery. So if you don't have testosterone, like, worrying about getting bulky is kind of like, I really wouldn't put it high on the list. Worrying about being strong and healthy would be more important to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's kind of talk about then, so we've had bariatric surgery and someone wants to start lifting. And so the number one question I get is, oh my gosh, Kim, where do I start? So I wanted to kind of turn that over to you and maybe you could give us kind of some phases, but, right out of the gate, someone wants to start lifting. What is maybe how often they should start per week in the beginning versus where they're going to build up to? What's kind of the first steps, do you think?
Okay. So in this, I actually separate into 2 categories because I consider, exercising pre-op extremely important. Now, I understand maybe a lot of our audience is already post-op, but if you're thinking about having surgery and you want to listen, I encourage people to start exercising before surgery. Okay. For a couple reasons. One, you're going to be on a higher calorie count. Okay. So you're going to typically be able to build a little more muscle then. But 2, you're going to start to develop and activate a lot of muscle fiber. Okay. I always tell people we have muscle memory. Okay. So when you start to develop and activate these muscle fibers, they're going to be there. They might atrophy down, they might shrink, but that's okay. They're still going to be there. So when you have surgery, and this is for everybody. So now let's go through surgery. Okay. So when you have surgery, I tell everyone, this is always like my heartbreaker, the day of surgery and every day after surgery, you have to be up and walking. Okay. The day of surgery, you're required to get up and walk. And every day after, you're going to be walking. Okay. And that's for about 6 to 8 weeks. I usually use 6 to 8 weeks because depending on which procedure you had and how you recover, you're usually going to have a follow-up visit. Okay. And in that follow-up visit, there's going to be a conversation of how you're doing, how you're feeling. And that's typically when you'll be cleared to start exercising or return back to your regular exercise routine. Having worked with many pre-op patients, when they get cleared to return back to exercise, usually their cardiovascular system is a little behind, but they pick up pretty well and can continue kind of at whatever level they were before. If you did not start early, which is fine, okay, and you start afterwards, 6 to 8 weeks, I typically recommend about 30 minutes a day. Okay. And I like to break it up. I like to do 30 minutes of activity or walking. And then on the next day and alternating days, 30 minutes of like a strength training routine. And And that is because we're going to be on a lower calorie level. Okay. There's a lot of new things. There's a lot of transition and change in our body, and that affects a lot of systems. And when we first start exercising, the number one thing I preach is balance. Okay. Because our body is changing rapidly. Our center of gravity is different. Typically a lot of our center of gravity and our balance comes from our core. Okay. And weight distribution in our core might be changing. So, stabilizing our core, working our core movements. However, I do want to say people's abdominal and midsection, when they first start exercising after surgery, everyone feels a little different. Okay. And again, that's based off what procedure you had. So don't think like, I had surgery and that first right off the bat, I need to start strengthening my core. Take it easy. Don't rush. Twisting and bending. I'll get people to say, hey, I feel a little pulling and I really don't want any discomfort in that area. So I will delay stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And so would you say, when they're first starting, so they're alternating, they're doing the walking, and I just want to reiterate that too, because, for a lot of folks, they get out and it's like, okay, I want to start lifting right away. And it's like, okay, let's, slow it roll here, in terms of just building up, like you're saying, because I think for safety and also just, starting in a realistic way that can be sustained, right, is starting slowly. So maybe if you're doing every day, you're saying like maybe like 3 times a week of starting some basic weightlifting after you're cleared?
2 or 3 times a week. I don't have a problem with that. I have I go more by like how you're feeling. Okay. And this is very individual to people. On those days that we are strength training, I emphasize big movements. Okay. Big multi-joint movements. A lot of times we'll see people in the gym, and they're doing like a curl or a tricep press. No, I want to do big presses. I want to do big pulls. Starting with our lower half, typically I work on our glutes right off the bat. I'll do glute bridges. I'll do some type of assisted squat, whether you're using a TRX strap or a bench. I'm not against, and I do this very often, starting people somewhere sitting, having assistance and pulling themselves up and then using assistance to go back down. Long rest periods.
Yep.
And we can talk about, timing and rest periods later, but in the beginning, big movements, long rest periods, 20, 30 minutes, get in, get out, and recover.
I love it. Okay. So let's talk about structuring the workouts, because I do get this question too, is which body parts would you recommend pairing together in a lift? So maybe start with when you're beginning out, and then, down the road, is there changes? Do you change that, how that works?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, I usually work in traditional push-pull patterns, which would be any type of pushing and pulling. And I work in planes of motion. So if you think we have to move this way, we have to move this way, and we have to move this way. So a chest press with some type of a row pull. I like to pair those together. However, I will do legs every day, especially if we're taking a day off in between, because the day off in between, you're going to recover. Those legs, they're big muscle groups. They tend to catch up fast. Plus, we've already been walking for about 2 months.
Yep.
So you're going to have, some muscle activation muscles going there. And you can hit different parts of your legs on different days. If your quads are feeling bad, you can do some bungee and glute work and break it up in that way. That's in like the first 2 months. Okay. And
so can I just clarify? So pushing. So when we're talking about pushing, we're talking about like our pecs. So
pressing. Pressing on our shoulders, our chest. So you can press, up, you can press out, you can press incline, you can do any type of flying motion. You can do side raises. That would be any type of like shoulder or chest workout. And then anytime you're doing any part of a chest or a push, I recommend just pair it with a pull. Okay. And I'd say plane of motion, try to pick the same direction you just worked in. So if I'm doing a shoulder press, find a way to grab something and pull it down like a lat pull. And that's a very good starter roam, because you're hitting opposing muscle groups. One is accelerating and one is decelerating. And then you turn around and you accelerate and decelerate at the same time. That gets a lot of muscle activation. And it's very efficient.
Cool. And now, does that change as you become more, skilled or seasoned as a lifter? Do you still do those? I mean, so when you have patients that are 8 years out and you've been working with them for a long time, do you always do push, pull type of workouts?
No, I have people that, as they get to 8, 9 months out, and I can talk about kind of like this time frame in a minute, but depending on how advanced you are and how you're advancing is when we can start adding more days. Okay. So for first 2 months, 2 to 3 days. After that, I kind of call it listening to your body. Okay. And I have this little weird graph that I use and I tell people, and it'll make sense as I say it. So imagine our weight loss as the constant going down. Okay. And then we have another graph in there as well. And that graph is exercise. Okay. As my weight loss goes down, I start to exercise. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as my weight loss keeps going down, I get excited. Right. As my excitement goes up, I exercise more, but I'm on a
Got
lower
it.
calorie level. So I might start running out of energy. Right.
Sure.
And then I start to run out of energy. It seems like every once in a while we hit another landmark. Maybe it's a week. Maybe we go to solids. Maybe we start introducing carbohydrates. My calories go up. My weight
Mm-hmm.
loss is still going down. And then we start that over again. So as my calories go up, I get another kick of energy. I know that sounds
Mm-hmm.
kind of crazy and complex, but if you think about the enthusiasm that comes with, hey, I'm losing weight, I've got to be active. So you're losing weight,
Yeah.
you want to be active, but then you might overdo it. Hey, I'm getting a little tired
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of the week. Hey, next
Right.
week I get to introduce carbohydrates, or I can add, I can go from a quarter to a third of a cup, whatever it may be. Those added calories give us a little more energy. And so
Yep.
when we start hitting these landmarks, that's when I'll start either adding a day, incorporating more in a day, and I'll go anywhere from a push-pull day. Okay, that's a pretty typical day. And then to a leg day. I also like pairing or creating a day that's like a posterior chain day, which is your back
Okay.
and primarily your hamstrings and glutes. And that's a big pull day. Think like any type of a deadlift, any type of a row, a lat pull, any type of an RDL, a glute bridge, anything that's on our backside, I really like pairing together. And then if you're going to do that, you can separate your push days into a shoulder heavy day or a chest heavy day.
Okay. Okay.
And then sprinkling,
So that would
arms and abs throughout.
throughout. Yeah. Okay. So, and so like, what about like triceps? Like when do you usually do triceps? That's going to be what is
Push
that, a
day.
pull
So
day?
triceps will be on a push day. Yeah, because your triceps are going to work as well with your chest and any type of shoulder.
Okay.
And then also like when you're structuring a workout, I use this little formula like you want to have what you want, what you need, and what you like. Okay. So understanding like, hey, when I'm first starting working out or I have a goal or wherever I am, try to structure your workout with something that you want, what you need, and what you like. Okay. And an example of that is, I enjoy push-ups. That's what I like. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do push-ups. What I want to do is pull-ups. So maybe I practice my pull-ups. And then what I need is to strengthen my rotator cuffs, strengthen my grip strength, and work on my core. So understanding, putting a few pieces in those, hey, what do I want to do? I want to be strong. I want to look strong. So I need to do a push workout. What do I need to also do? I need to do some tricep. Pairing like muscle groups together. Anytime you pull, you can do bicep work, and that's just kind of doubling up that muscle group. That would be a little more advanced down the road, like 6-8 months. But yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Okay. And typically how many I had a question about like how many recommended like sets or reps would you start off with versus moving forward for someone that really is trying to gain muscle mass? Kind of where do we start and then what do we typically build to?
Okay. So also differentiating two things here. I differentiate muscle mass and strength. Okay. Because
Okay.
we can work towards both, achieve one, not the other at any given point in time. We know that
Okay.
muscle mass requires protein. If I am tearing down my muscle, I need to have protein to rebuild it. Having the measure marker of getting stronger, though, is something that encourages us to keep moving forward. So don't get discouraged. Hey, I'm doing my 3 sets of 4. I'm doing my 4 sets of 4, and I'm not getting any bigger. Understanding like, hey, I'm getting stronger is positive. Whenever anybody starts with me, I usually start on 2 exercises, and I'll do 2 to 3 sets. And I like to go with time. Okay. I keep people on a timer because I want to see how we're keeping up to a certain pace. Anytime someone's doing an exercise, I think or tell them to think about 30 seconds per exercise. So if I'm doing a push with a tricep, or I'm just going to do a push, about 30 seconds of exertion. And that's getting on the machine, doing it, taking a break. And then I'm going to rest. And my rest intervals will differentiate based off what I'm trying to do. If I do an exercise for 30 seconds, I rest a minute and a half and I try to do it again. And that's good. Okay. There's 2 sets. I try to perform my 3rd set and I cannot perform it. That tells me that we are either out of shape muscular wise or cardiovascular wise. So either we need to back off the load of the weight or back off the pace in which we're doing it. So typically 2 exercises, 3 movements, aim to get that done in like 6 to 8 minutes.
Got it. Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, and that's a little bit different than I think, most folks just think the traditional 3 sets of 10, you know what I mean? And just understanding that there's so many different ways to structure a workout, I think is helpful and interesting. And, for when folks are looking for a trainer, you can kind of figure out what way they do things, right? Because everyone might do something a little bit different.
Yeah, everyone does things very different. Everyone's very different. And then also something to think about. I always tell people, whatever you're trying to work on in that exercise in that day, put it first. Typically you're going to be a little more fresher in that workout. So, hey, today I really want to work on squatting, or say we want to work on our squat. You're going to do a warm up. Okay. Now this is a very controversial word because people go warm up, activation. You don't need this. You don't need that. Yes, we do, because we want all or as many muscle fibers working as we can. You do not want to exhaust yourself in a warm up or a activation, but you want to get things moving. Then if I want to work on squatting today, we do my squats first. Okay. So order of operations, I always say, is as important as rest intervals, days of the week, and whatnot.
Yeah. Let's talk about that really quick. I know this isn't on a question I had sent, but let's talk about warm up really quick, because I do get that question about, should they just start stretching? What's a typical warm up that you do with your clients, or that you would recommend to prevent injury but get their muscles activated so they're ready to lift?
Yeah. So I have 3 areas: shoulders, hips, knees, and depending on what we're working on that day, hips usually involve core as well. It's kind of like upper, mid, and lower. And there's different things we can do. Now, a warm up should be anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes. Stretching, there's nothing wrong with stretching. It seems like every time something comes out and says, oh, stretching's bad here, now stretching's good there. Yeah. There's a lot of information out there. It's always coming fast. Any movement and any exercise is better than nothing. Okay. So if you feel comfortable and you feel good, hey, before I go walking, or before I walk on the treadmill, or before I start doing this, I like to stretch out. That is completely fine. Spending 8 to 12 minutes. You don't want to exhaust yourself, but a quick shoulder warm up. We'll be working all planes of our shoulders, some side raises, some front raises, external rotation. I also like to usually throw some stability in there. So some form of the straight arm plank. Hips can be some glute bridges. It can be some movement side to side. It can be some leg swings. Okay. And again, maybe a stability movement like a plank or a side plank or a plank twist. And then when we're talking about our knees, a little more glute serious, a monster walk, a bungee shuffle, a ball squeeze where we're working our adductors, something like that.
I love it. Okay, good. Yeah, because that's a good, just remind folks that you don't want to generally just jump in. Getting started, warming your body up so that you're ready for the workout is a good place to begin. And so let's talk about this. So how long, when you work out with your clients, how long is a typical workout? Just for someone to understand, like, what's a typical workout? I know you said that when you first start, usually 30 minutes is a good starting point, but as you move forward then, what's a typical length of a workout? I mean, I know it's variable depending upon what your goals are, but just in general.
No, we try to work up to an hour. Like, I encourage an hour. Minimum, 3 days a week of getting an hour in. And then within that hour, you can break it up again with what you like, what you want, what you need. Hey, I really enjoy jogging. I really enjoy running. Awesome. I'll typically break that up. Hey, let's do 15 minutes of running at the beginning, and then we'll do 15 minutes of running at the end. And then, you kind of structure the workout in between. Again, I try to put everything on a timer, make sure that we're on pace, on tempo. And that's how I kind of gauge, hey, I'm doing too much.
Right.
But yeah, I really prefer to work up to an hour.
Okay.
Also, I understand people have time crunches. There's nothing wrong with breaking it up. Let me say that as well. I used to really preach this years ago. Break it up. Do your 20 minutes of cardio, walking, cycling, stretching, yoga. Do it in the morning. And then if you find another 15 or 20 minutes in the evening where you can work on some shoulder strength or some core work, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Perfect. Now let me ask you that. So do you think it's good for folks to separate cardio and lifting days? Or does it really make a difference, or what do you think?
So I think that if you're trying to build muscle, that you should, because you have to think about when we're building muscle, we're working on building muscle, we're already on a lower calorie level as is. Okay. And we're, the protein that we're getting, it's like a valuable protein, right? So if I do a bunch of stuff in that day, my resources can only be divided so much. So when we get to a point where, hey, I really want to develop some shoulders and my arms, I really want to tone this up, I slow the tempo down and I try not to burn as many calories during the workout, which seems to be like a lot of times people's goals, right? With a HIIT circuit or any type of fast pacing, they want to keep moving. I really want to burn a lot of calories. That's very counterproductive to just burning and building muscle mass. So cardiovascular system is extremely important to develop, the ability to pump blood nutrients, throughout the body. So we can't neglect it, but I would prefer to separate it.
Yeah. Okay, good. And that's good to know because I do, like I said, a lot of folks want to burn calories. That's fine because especially in that first, year and a half, we're really in that weight loss phase. And as we both know, yes, they're in limited calorie intake. So it's more difficult to go long and hard and do all the things in one day. And then versus the people that just really are focused on muscle gaining, it is critical to be able to have all the energy that you need to put into those, the lifting of the heavier weights to stimulate that growth,
Yes,
correct?
100%. And you just hit the nail on the head. Within that first year, I tell people, you're accelerating on a weight loss plan, right? We're going to lose a lot of weight in that first year. I always tell people like, hey, I put my foot in my mouth. Whenever I meet with somebody pre-op, I tell you, when you're going to have surgery, you're going to lose weight, right? You're going to lose weight. How you keep losing weight, get to your goal weight and maintain that weight. The farther you get away from surgery, the more important exercise becomes. Okay. So within that first year, I try to keep, hey, let's keep the tempo. Let's take advantage of how much weight we're going to lose. We can fit in cycles of building muscle, obviously, but understanding like we really want to take advantage of this system.
Definitely. So how much rest for those that are trying to gain muscle, how much rest do you recommend in between sets when they're doing the heavier lifts? What would you recommend?
Okay. So I use 3 different ratios and this is like my KISS method, which I've used forever. For strength, if I'm trying to build muscle and actually get stronger, I use a 3-to-1 ratio. So whatever my exertion is, I do 3 parts rest. If I'm trying to keep my heart rate up and I'm trying to get a lot of muscle fibers recruited, which would be more like, middle of the phase, like, hey, I'm about 4 to 6 months post-op and I really want to, develop a good baseline. I do a 2-to-1 ratio. Okay. For cardiovascular training, hey, I want to keep my heart rate up long. I'm working a faster pace. I'll do a 1-to-1 ratio. And then anything above that, like VO2 max, I do a 1 to 1/2 ratio.
Okay. So when you say like 3-to-1, you mean like, so if I exercise for 30 seconds, I get a minute and a half rest?
Yes.
Okay. Cause that's 3 of those segments. And then if it's 2-to-1, if I exercise for 30 seconds, then it's a 1 minute rest, right?
And
then 1-to-1 is 30-30. Okay.
Yes. And I always use the example of we need rest, especially in developing strength and trying to recruit muscle fibers and build them, because every time we do something, we want it to be done at max output. And I use the example of sprinting. Okay. So if I want to get better at sprinting and I go out and I sprint 40 yards, my heart rate's going to be up. I'm going to deplete all the oxygen in my legs. My glycogen levels are depleting. I need to rest because the next time I sprint, I want to sprint as fast as I did last time because I want max output. Okay. So if I start running and I'm just slowing so far down to where now I'm just getting through the movement, we are no longer making that muscle stronger because now it's in like a flight mode. It's not able to recover, start to repair and think about performing again. It's just on a massive recovery phase. So yes, 3-to-1 to start. Typically I give every exercise about a 30 seconds. So say we're going to do a superset, which would be 2 exercises back to back. That's about a minute of exertion. Take a 2 to 3 minute rest. And then you can advance those rests based off, am I completing the set? Am I able to do the amount of weight allotted? Or, I'm out of breath. I can no longer, talk, catch my breath. And that's going to adjust those rests.
Got it. Okay. And then there's that talk of the principle of progressive overload. I get this question a lot is when do I know to start increasing my weight? As I am trying to get stronger, build muscle. At what point is it that you would tell a client, okay, hey, we need to increase our weights here?
When you're completing those movements in the allotted time. Hey, I just did my two movements. I rested for 2 minutes and I did them again. I will generally increase the weight as the sets goes on. Okay. We don't need to stay at the same weight. A lot of the time we'll find that as we're working throughout a workout, because we talked about that, activation warm-up period, as you start working any type of movement, say a pressing movement, you're still actively activating and recruiting muscle fibers that will contribute to the movement. So as people go through certain movements, they'll find that your strength doesn't go like this. It kind of works on a bell curve. Your first movement, you might not feel strong. And then your second and third set, you might feel really strong. And then you hit that fatigue set. Well, you're not hitting that fatigue set. It's usually, 5 to 10% increase. But I encourage to move up throughout the workout as well. Start at a manageable weight and then kind of move throughout there.
And what do you usually increase by, just out of curiosity? Do you usually go up 5 pounds, 10 pounds, just based on how they feel or how easy it was?
I'll go percentages. I'll go about 10%. Yeah. I'll work
Okay.
on like a 90, 80, 70, 60%. And that's if we have like a hard, like, hey, number. Understanding our strengths at the very beginning, it's kind of irrelevant when we're just getting started out. As you get down the road and you say like, hey, I'm able to press this chest press machine at 100 pounds 3 times. So we can kind of guess like, okay, your 1 rep max might be around 120.
Sure.
Let's start at 75% and work in 6 to 8 reps. And then we can kind of go up from there.
Gotcha. Okay. And so when you're not seeing gains, so let's say someone's hit a plateau and they're like, okay, I'm not seeing gains. I mean, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the nutrition side of this, but what would you recommend in terms of just how to mix up a routine when it's kind of getting stale or that you feel like you're not progressing?
One would be order of operations. Okay. We talked about kind of like, hey, what do we want to really work on at the beginning? When I get stale or I see people getting stale and we've been working on something at the very beginning and we're just, hey, we're not going up in weight. I'll put it at the end because I want to get you really tired. And then I want to see you perform that exercise, because if we're performing it a little more tired, but we're trying to kind of do the same weight, odds are if you wait 2 weeks and put it back at the beginning, you're going to be better at it. So changing order operations, changing your days of the week. Okay. Hey, every Monday I'm doing my lower body. I'm going to change it up and I'll do my upper body on Monday. Or, hey, I'm going to take a 3-day split this week and I'm going to work total body every day. Increasing our rest between sets, and then working on tempo. Okay. A lot of times tempo gets kind of disregarded and we kind of go through things. Hey, today I'm going to work on going really slow all the way down. Okay. I'm going to work on really slow controlling the weight. And then I'm going to work on really pushing it fast up.
I love that. So because there's so many different variables then that you can try. You don't have to do all of them at once though, right? You can just try a couple of them at a time and see if that helps. And then if it doesn't, you could try these other options, right?
Yeah, we're so we're very habitual creatures, and we don't really realize how it is, how bad it is until we kind of like start writing stuff down or monitoring. So like I would say, like, I bet if you go to the gym, you probably do the same things every time, and you probably kind of work your way around the gym in an order that's familiar to you or that you're comfortable with or whatever it may be. So reverse that order today. Reverse that order and, give yourself half the rest time and just see what happens. It's going to be completely different on your body, right?
Totally. I know I worked out at Orange Theory for a long time. And I remember them saying, I always would do treadmill first. And then I was wondering why I wasn't seeing any muscle gains. Well, I was going from the treadmill to rowing to lifting. And by the time I got to lifting, I was pretty spent. And so when I started mixing that up and doing, the lifting component first and leaving the cardio to later, I saw a change. And it was just like you're saying, just simply changing the order was a big, help for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we get in that comfort zone. And sometimes it's convenience, right? Like, hey, I get to the gym at a certain time and this is what's open and I have to use that. That's fine. That's going to happen. But I'm a big write it down kind of person. So writing down, hey, what I did today, what order I did it in, how did I feel? How did I feel after the workout? How did I feel the next morning? How did I feel, if I worked out at 8 a.m., how did I feel around 4 or 5 o'clock? Was I crashing? Was I really sore? Did I feel really good? Maybe I could have went faster.
Right. And just, I think that's a key piece too, is tracking. I know I had talked to Dr. Sarah Anderson a couple weeks ago about keeping a log just on lots of different things. And that includes your food intake can be helpful. Some folks, don't find it helpful, but I think like you're saying, keeping a log of your weights and things too will help you to know as well, like, oh, have I been gaining? Have I stagnated? Tracking what you're doing, I think is a helpful tool for good feedback.
Yeah, I love logging. I'm very old fashioned. I like writing stuff down. And it could be as simple as like, hey, what'd you eat before your workout? Was it a snack? Was it a meal? Was it protein heavy? Was it carbohydrate heavy? How did you feel during that workout with that meal? And you could obviously comment a lot more on that, but that's always something I tell people. And then hydration, I cannot preach water enough, because that's going to affect not only how you look, but how you feel and perform in the gym.
Yep, totally. Yeah. And I just want to comment on that. So I get, along with what to do to lift to stimulate muscle gains, which is, the stimulus is the, working out, then obviously refueling those muscles with the adequate nutrition. And so the most current research for protein intake for stimulating muscle gains, and I've talked about this in other episodes, but 0.7 to 1 gram per pound has been really shown to be a good range to be aiming for, that minimum of that 0.7 gram per pound and I always just mention this in my podcast. This is for when you've reached your maintenance and or goal weight. We want to use that weight as the calculation to determine your grams of protein. But that 0.7 to 1 has just been shown consistently, and that's 1.6 to about 2.2 gram per kilogram if you're a metric fan. That's kind of been the range where we've been able to see some good muscle gains. And then just, of course, adequate calories. So like you've mentioned a couple times, and I want to just comment on this because I get this question, why am I not gaining? It's like, well, yeah, you're doing all the things, you're doing great exercise, but like you and I were saying earlier, especially in the first year, you are in a weight loss, phase, right? We are in very low calories. You're in a significant caloric deficit. And in order to gain muscle, you have to eat adequate calories and certainly enough protein. And so I just want to remind folks, when we're listening and thinking about why am I not gaining, we're going to need at some point to probably look at overall intake and start making some increases. And so for bariatric clients, I don't know if Nick, you would agree, but it does take them a little bit longer to gain muscle because they are in a caloric deficit, and remember that as you lose weight, and of course, after the surgery, your metabolism decreases because you're intaking such a small amount. And so as you're losing weight too, your body does need overall less calories. But if you want to see gains, we need to look at your overall intake of both energy overall as well as protein.
Yeah. And that's why I was specific on saying gains are in two ways, right? Strength gains and size gains are very different. And the muscle functions in two different ways. People kind of don't really understand like the anatomy of a muscle. The size is from the breakdown and the added nutrients, which makes it grow. Okay. That's a very simple explanation of it. The performance of a muscle is actually more neurological. So understanding like gains and progress can be measured in the forms of obviously the scale. Like we can see, are we losing weight? Is our weight changing? But hey, how are my pants fitting? Am I losing inches? Is my waist shrinking down? Hey, I'm getting stronger. I'm wearing the same clothes. I weigh the same amount, but I'm able to press a lot more this week than I was 2 weeks ago. So all these little significant things are changes. Endurance. Hey, I did my full workout and then I walked 40 minutes in the evening. I only walked 25, but I'm feeling a lot better. My legs are getting stronger. There's multiple ways to measure success.
That's such a great point. That's so key. And those little non-scale victories of like not always just looking at the scale, but the measurements and how you feel and just other things that you're achieving in your life. There's so many things that happen on this journey that isn't just, scale related, but, I know that that's oftentimes what we look at, but I love that you mentioned that because it's so important to kind of, look away from the scale and see all the other great things that are happening.
100%. Yeah. And like you say, the small victories, I'm a big celebrate all wins kind of guy. I get people tell me like, hey, I took a tub of Christmas decorations off my shelf and I feel my arms are stronger, my back's stronger. I can carry it. And I'm like, well, that's fantastic. Like that's functional things. That's just things that are getting easier in life because of your strength training, because you're building a stronger, healthier body.
Yep, absolutely. So, I just want to ask, I do get a lot of questions of like HIIT workouts, like a CrossFit type of workout versus a traditional strength training. And I know I'm just throwing this in here and throwing you in another one. But I do get that, what do you think of, is there any particular type of benefits that go over one type of, gym or type of way that they work out over another for bariatric clients? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So it's all going to be off of your personal ability. And that's something I really try to stress. We all have a very different starting point. Okay. We all have a very different day-to-day activity. We all have a very different body composition, very different starting point. Age and other health factors can be, a factor in that. Figuring out where you fit in and starting slow is always very important to me because often I get I call them the early enthusiasts. And when I get someone that walks in and says, hey, I want to work out every day. I want a meal plan. I want to do this. I'm like, let's do one. Okay. I'm big on one. Let's do one thing at a time. Let's master getting into the gym once a week, every week. Let's master getting our walk in every day. Let's master eating a good breakfast every day. So mastering these small things down the road, I've had post-op patients run half marathons. I know one that's an excellent rower and competes professionally rowing. They running, hiking, whatever your personal goal is, align your activity with that. And that's what will make you successful.
That's so true. Yeah. So a lot of these different types of programs out there, if it works for you, great. And find what works best for you.
Absolutely. Find, and then, with what you're comfortable with. Right. And then if you're aligning yourself with other trainers or other systems, understand that you are a little different from the average gym goer because you have had a physiological change, right? Your stomach is different, your intestine, your gut microbiome, everything is different, right? So the answer isn't, oh, just have some more carbs at breakfast or eat more protein in the evening. You're going to have a different approach and it's going to be very individual to you.
Yep, absolutely. And that's, I know, with the area of the clientele that I work with, which is, active bariatric clients who've had surgery. I often get that, well, what am I supposed to be doing? And it's like, yeah, there's not a ton of research for active bariatric clients. And you and I were saying this before we started recording, that there's not a ton of there aren't just set guidelines like, oh, you're an active bariatric client. Here are the set guidelines for lifting. Here are the set calories and protein. We have to kind of utilize, the research and the things that are out there right now, especially in my area, like the sports nutrition. And guess what? Just like you would do for anybody, it's all going to be very individual. And what works for you may not work for someone else. Your amount of calories and carbohydrates and protein may be different than someone else in a different, part of their journey. It's all going to be individualized. And I think what's key is finding what works best for you and being consistent with that.
Absolutely. And like, you guys said, active bariatrics, we're all active people, right? We're all trying to do stuff. I train a lot of people the way I train athletes. We are going to be explosive in some manner to your extent. Maybe your explosiveness is throwing a 10-pound ball on the ground. Maybe your explosiveness is standing and doing high knees and just working on driving your knee into the air for 30 seconds or whatever it is possible. So there are levels of doing everything and modifications that we can all achieve.
Absolutely. Okay, so question now, if you have an injured area, so let's say someone comes to you and they're like, hey, I have a bad left hip or, whatever body part, so to speak, but I still want to stay active or whatever. Can they still continue to, exercise? And obviously, if the doctor tells them no, I'm not disregarding any doctor's, recommendations, but they're allowed to move, what would you say in terms of how you can kind of maintain what you've been doing, even if you have maybe one part that's, a little bit injured?
Yeah. So I always say that pain is very personal. Okay. And if you come to me with shoulder pain, I'm going to say, okay, what is hurting? Do you know, is there structural damage or does it hurt? Okay. Now, if there's structural damage, I'm kind of famous for saying, well, the damage is done. We're not going to make anything worse, but what can we do around it? If you're having knee pain, maybe you're bone on bone in your knees, maybe you have really bad arthritis. So we're not going to start strengthening your knees. We're going to look around it. Okay. We're going to strengthen your hips. We're going to do as much as we can to strengthen areas around it to take pressure off that area and have some other muscle groups work. Also remember this as we talk about pain. A lot of times I get asked like, hey, I started working out or I went out running, bleachers with my friends and I couldn't walk for 7 or 8 days. That is not a good thing. All right. We are going to have some discomfort. We are going to have soreness after working out, but not being able to move, I always say it's like a cost and balance, a cost and reward ratio. If I exercise on a Monday and I am so sore that I can't do anything for 1 week, that was more negative than it was beneficial. Right. So understanding that's that whole start slow and build up theory. If you have an injury, the easiest thing to do is work around it, go up or down. If it's your lower back, hey, can we work on our glutes? Can we work on our shoulders? Can we work on our back and posture? And if it's, hey, I've got a knee that I'm waiting on a knee replacement, we're going to start strengthening all those areas that a physical therapist would already tell you to start strengthening.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Because I think it's important, because obviously we all get, little things here and there, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to full stop. There are other options that you can do to stay, active and try to hopefully strengthen or maintain, what you've been building.
Yeah. And I'm really conditioned to not take like no for an answer. So if it says, oh, I can't do that because of this, well, what can we do? I understand we can't do that, but we can do something else. So, taking these big, these leaves of absence, like, oh, I hurt my shoulder, I can't do anything. Well, we can work on our core. We can work on our lower body. Hey, your lower body's hurt. Hey, we can work on our core and our upper body. We can work forearm and grip strength if that's what we have to do, but working towards something and just staying active and keeping active, because that just keeps you on your routine, right? Again, once we break off that routine, it's very hard to get back on. So just staying active with something.
I love that. Yeah, for sure. And I did have this random question. And I thought it was a great question. What are some of the most common underdeveloped areas or maybe things that people don't always focus on that, you see like, oh yeah, it's pretty common that they don't typically focus on this particular muscle group. Do you ever see anything in your
Grip
clients?
strength, scapula, and our hips. Okay. And in order, grip strength, we don't realize how much we have to use our hands. Okay. And as we get more active, we're going to use our hands more, right? Scapula, our upper back. One, because of posture. Okay. We all seem to have a rolled over posture. I always say there's two parts of posture. One is identifying where proper posture is supposed to be, but two is being strong enough to hold that posture, right? If I just take you and I sit you up really tight and say, oh, we should sit right here. After about 20 seconds, you're going to say, that hurts. It's uncomfortable because we're not strong enough to hold that position for long periods of time. So strengthening that scapula, understanding, I always call it pinch your ponytail, drive those shoulder blades back, strengthen the middle of our back. And then our lower half, I always say like one of the number one signs of health is going to be muscle mass. And I say, hey, one day you're going to sit down and you're going to want to get back up. Okay. We're always going to be able to sit down and get back up. So strengthening our glutes and our quads. So just, you can never do enough of that.
Yep. I love that. Perfect. Yeah, I think that was a great question. I was like, oh, I have to ask Nick that. I got to make sure we get that one in. So are there any other pieces of advice that you have for, someone that's had bariatric surgery and wants to start, working out? Any other piece of advice that you have for today?
I think walk, don't run. Start slow, find something you're comfortable with. Set up some type of accountability system. I usually encourage people to get some type of a fitness tracker. I know that they're not the most accurate, and I've had people tell me, hey, they're not accurate, but it's something. It's giving you something that at least, hey, I've got to get more steps in, right? So something that's going to hold you accountable to that. And then, develop your plan. And finding things that you like and enjoy. We typically think, exercise. I'm a big fan of strength training. I think we should all do it. It can be walking. It can be walking to the park and moving around. It can be Zumba. It can be yoga. It can be Pilates. Getting in the pool. It's not pool season anymore. Getting in the pool and move around. There's plenty of water aerobics places. And then workout videos. There's a ton of workout videos and a lot of free information and apps out there. I always tell people when you're searching for stuff, consider what you do, Google it, see how ridiculous things come up. So kind of sort through stuff in the same manner. But finding things you enjoy, that's probably the most important, because we really are rewriting our identity through this post-op phase. And I had somebody else tell me this about 5 or 6 years ago, that once they had surgery, they really had to kind of figure out who and how they were going to be different, because food, we revolve ourselves around food a lot. And, it's for get-togethers, it's for gatherings, it's for, hey, we're going to meet for lunch. Figuring out how to rewire our identity and find other things that we enjoy and put these in place will help with that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your business and where people can contact you to learn more about you?
Yeah. So like I said, I have my own gym. I have some trainers that I work with. I take on private clientele. And I do accountability systems. A lot of my accountability systems are people that I work with that maybe live here or live, like I said, throughout the valley, throughout the state, and we could check in via Zoom. Sometimes they'll come to the gym and I'll work with them, 30 minutes, an hour. And that's really me getting to know them. And then I give them stuff to do on their own. They take off. We check in about a month down the road. Body measurements, check their body fat, see how things are changing, see how they're feeling. And it's really whatever they want. And that's really, I'm here to just help them in every aspect.
Absolutely. And do you have like an email that we can give out so folks could message you if they have questions?
Yeah. So my email would be my name, Nick Bates, 3047 @yahoo.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, I just so appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Nick. I know this was so requested, and I hope it was just a really helpful episode for everybody, but just thank you so much for your time and expertise. It's so good to see you again.
I appreciate it. It was great. I enjoy being able to have like open conversation about health. If we get more topics and we want to do it again, I would be, thrilled to do it. And you just let me know.
Yes, I think I will. I'm going to just say that right now. If you have more questions that we did not cover today that you would like Nick to answer, we will absolutely do another podcast, because I again, as we talked about, I think that this is an area that doesn't get a ton of, there's not a ton of just set guidelines and things like that. And everybody's so different that I really want to make sure that folks are feeling like they're having their questions answered. So definitely send those in. So if you want to send me questions, you can find me on social media on my Instagram, which is Active Bariatric. You can follow me on Facebook, TikTok. You can also watch the full episodes of these podcasts on my YouTube channel, which is the Active Bariatric Nutrition channel. And if you want to learn more about my one-to-one bariatric nutrition coaching services, you can go to my website, www.activebariatricnutrition.com, and schedule a discovery call so we can learn more about each other. Thank you again for joining me today, and we'll talk again next week. Take care, everybody.